Two. All right, if everyone could take their seats, we'll get started promptly. We've got 2 cases today and lots of folks have plans. All right, let's begin. Mr. Knapp, could you please call the roll?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Barcelona.
Here.
Ron.
Here.
Brazil.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Doring.
Here.
Duggan.
Here.
Ewell. Gordon.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Long.
Here.
Moodian.
Here.
Moon.
Here.
Nieto.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Terrio. And Woolry.
Here.
It's 14 members.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce Council Deputy Attorney General Chris Beatty to Manny's right, and to my right, our Executive Director, Manny Alvarez. We'll begin right off with public comment set aside for members of the public to comment on items on our agenda or not on the agenda, but under our jurisdiction. Any comment on the 2 peace officer cases would be appropriate before the cases. Up to 15 minutes will allot if we need it. Does anyone wish to address the commission? Good morning, Ms. Williamson.
Try not to be emotional. So I'm addressing you guys for your law enforcement departments. As a parent of 4 children, my last one is in high school. We went over our safety plan because of the state of the United States and the world. My son is in a school that is a soft target for domestic and international terrorism. It is very close to a base. And if it is hit, it is going to be catastrophic, whether it would be active shooter or bombing. There is one entrance in and one entrance out. It's very hard for me as a parent to know that our military bases have increased their threat level and our law enforcement departments have increased theirs. But there has been no training and no support to our schools and other soft targets. And I hope that that will change across this state and across this nation, because if you are unable to get into our schools, if your officers are unable to get into our schools, it is our children and our teachers who become the first responders. And they do not have the tools that they need to be able to save their lives. And so I hope that you will reconsider how you, and if you already do, thank you, but you will reconsider how you prepare people in your community, especially those most vulnerable, for what may come and what is likely to come, because they are not prepared. My son is, but that is only because of the work that I do. And we have had many, many death threats to myself and my family because of the work that I do, not only from law enforcement officers, but also from white supremacist groups. And so we have had to train my entire family, my children, that if I go down, that they pick up weapons to protect themselves and save their lives, that they understand situational awareness. Other people are not doing that, and they're not ready. So I ask you and implore all of you that if you have schools that your children go to, or you have schools that are in your police department areas, that you get them prepared for what may come. The other thing that I want to discuss is that we were informed that there is an officer who doesn't necessarily fall under your serious misconduct. But I'm going to tell you the story. He went and solicited a sex worker and asked for a 13 and 14-year-old sex worker. The adult sex worker told on him. He is no longer working, but he is still getting paid by the police department in our community. And we hope that you will work with that police department to make sure that his certification is suspended, because he should not be working. He should not be getting a paycheck as far as I'm concerned. But this is what we deal with here in San Diego, and I'm sure across the state of California. And this is why the community does not trust law enforcement officers, because of the diabolical and horrible things that we also hear and see in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Anyone else like to address the commission at this time? Sir?
Good morning. Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody, California. And in light of what we're going to talk about today, as far as the cases, I wanted to bring everybody's attention to spousal abuse in law enforcement. They're multiple times higher than the average community. Let's say, for example, the last result that we looked at in research was 10% of the community had spousal abuse, where 20 to 40% of law enforcement had spousal abuse, which was highly under reported. But today we see that the average community now has 1 in 4 spousal abuse for males and 1 in 3 for females. And we haven't had another inspection of law enforcement spousal abuse since in the 1990s. Everybody who references law enforcement spousal abuse as a report for the nation has been 1990s. And 2000 is the latest one I could find for the nation. I'm not sure. I looked into our reports that we got yesterday. I didn't see spousal abuse broke out. I might have missed it. There was a lot of charts and a lot of information. I might have missed it, but I didn't see spousal abuse broke out in itself. Domestic violence didn't broken out in itself. I saw sexual abuse. I saw other things. So it is something that we need to stand up for law enforcement families and those officers themselves to have some mitigation in their stressful work, in their stressful environment, so that it's not resulting in a hostile environment for the family, spouses, and children. So given light of what we're seeing today, I wanted to make sure we highlighted that that study and the studies of making sure that everyone understands what's going on in law enforcement. I was really surprised that I couldn't find more recent studies on that, not in California and not in nationally, when it comes to law enforcement spousal abuse. The only thing I saw was relationships to how law enforcement can impact spousal abuse in the community, but nothing about the officers themselves. And I think the families of law enforcement deserve it. Also, the officers who are serving in law enforcement deserve more attention to this subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Would anyone else like to address the commission this morning? Come forward, sir.
Okay, thank you. Darwin Fishman, he, him, his, Racial Justice Coalition in San Diego. And I wanted to support what Yusuf and Tasha just shared with you. And especially since you're here in San Diego, and we appreciate you being here. And I wanted you to know that one of the things that weighs heavy on us community members here in San Diego, in case any of you are not familiar with this, and I'll just take this in terms of the headline here of one of the local papers. San Diego $30 million payout for killing 16-year-old Conan Wilson is among the largest police killing settlements in U.S. history. But who really pays for police violence? Just an example, one of the articles here And the $30 million, one of the reasons why it cuts really deep, not just because the settlement is more than what George Floyd family got, $27 million, and not just the fact that it's an embarrassment on a certain level for San Diego, that's the record now we're setting with $30 million, but also because we're in an intense budget fight right now, where literally things like parking meters in Balboa Park is what we're fighting over to raise enough money for the city. And something like this, the $30 million is not even on the agenda. It's almost like it's a hidden part of our life here. And we're hoping that, and I'm glad to see members of the CPP, Commission on Police Practice here, and our new executive director, that this begins to be highlighted and that this is connected to things like public policy, and that the work that you guys do and the work that we do on a local level is really significant. Put it bluntly, if this first year officer hadn't done this or had been trained better or not hired in the first place, the city would have $30 million more. So is there things that can be done in terms of things like civilian oversight of police that can help us better manage the city, better run the city, and that it's integrated into public policy? Is that something that the public should pay for? What budget should it come out of? I think those are really critical questions, and they're neglected, and we just assume that the status quo is the way it has to go. And it also neglects the fact that there's not room for improvement. So especially since you're here, I wanted to make sure I share that with you. You have appreciation of what we're struggling with here in San Diego, like so many places up and down the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman, for taking the time to testify. Are there any other members of the public or otherwise who would like to address the commission this morning? Seeing none, we'll move now to case review of officer certification recommendations made by POSAB. We have 2 cases to hear today. A few preparatory remarks for all parties. We are reviewing only the facts today and evidence as presented by the Peace Officer Standards Accountability Division and the recommendations of the Peace Officer Standards Accountability Advisory Board. This is not an evidentiary hearing. The rules of evidence do not apply. Evidence is not formally admitted into the record under the Penal Code and applicable state regs. This hearing determines whether the matter proceeds to a full evidentiary hearing under an administrative law judge. At this stage, the commission will only consider the facts that the division, after investigation, believes can be proven at a later evidentiary hearing. For our first case, Post Law Enforcement Consultant Rob Guyton and Brian Hoffman, Post Legal Affairs Bureau, will present the case Post 2402338 Elliot Lopez, who at the time of the events at issue in this case was employed by the California Highway Patrol. The Peace Officer Standards Accountability Advisory Board voted 5-1 to decertify Mr. Lopez. Gentlemen.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Rob Guyton. I'm a Bureau Chief assigned to the Professional Conduct Northern Bureau in the Peace Officer Standard Accountability Division. I'm here with Brian Hoffman, an attorney with our Legal Affairs Division, and we're here in respect to case Post 2402838 versus Elliot Lopez, formerly of the California Highway Patrol. In this case, the division found reasonable grounds to believe Elliot Lopez engaged in serious misconduct in violation of Penal Code Section 13510.8 B6, acts that violate the law. Specifically, that Lopez committed domestic violence upon his spouse on March 24th, 2024. In accordance with the requirements of Senate Bill 2, and as required by Penal Code Section 13510.85 A4, this matter was heard by the Peace Officers Standard Accountability Advisory Board on February 5th, 2026. Following the conclusion of that hearing, the board voted for the recommendation of revocation of Lopez's post-certification. The division now presents this matter to you for your consideration of suspension or revocation. As required by Penal Code Section 13510.85 A5, the record of that proceeding is before you, which includes the agenda and attachments from that meeting, a transcript of the relevant portions of the hearing, and the recommendations of the board. Due to the matter being heard in closed session by the board, Commission counsel will be able to advise you with respect to those procedures. The law requires your review to be of that record before the board, which is before you, and which you have had an opportunity to review. To assist you in your review of the record, I will take you through the case as presented there. As the record shows, law enforcement consultant Ray Beckler presented the case before the board substantially as follows. The respondent began his career with the California Highway Patrol on June 18th, 2004. There's the timeline for you. The respondent received his basic certificate on March 18th, 2009. He was an active member of the peer support team. The respondent had 3 past annual performance evaluations in 2024, 2023, and 2022. Respondent was rated either proficient or excellent in all areas. The respondent has no prior complaints of misconduct resulting in disciplinary action from his agency. In regard to the present allegation, the California Highway Patrol became aware of the respondent's misconduct following his arrest in Las Vegas, Nevada on March 24th, 2024, for domestic violence against the victim, who he was in a qualifying relationship with. The respondent resigned from his employment prior to being interviewed by Internal Affairs and discipline being imposed. The CHP completed their administrative investigation and sustained allegations of misconduct against the respondent. On October 15th, 2024, CHP reported this case to Post. A factual summary of the respondent's misconduct is as follows. In March 2024, the respondent and victim traveled to Las Vegas, Nevada for an annual trip with friends. The respondent, victim, and friends checked into the Westgate Hotel on Thursday, March 21st, 2024, and planned to stay for several days to attend a popular cigar conference. The next 3 days were spent with friends and seemed to go as planned as they enjoyed the conference and Las Vegas festivities at night. However, on Saturday, March 23rd, 2024, the victim, respondent, and their friends visited Fremont Street to dance and enjoy music. As the night ended, the respondent and victim returned to their hotel for the evening. At approximately 4:15 in the morning of March 24th, 2024, the respondent physically attacked the victim by punching her in the face, head, arms, and upper torso multiple times, causing significant injuries. Hotel security received numerous calls from nearby guests regarding screaming and yelling emanating from the respondent's room. They were directed to the respondent's room where the yelling was coming from and contacted the respondent. According to security, they made entry into the room and saw the respondent holding a trash can, and he had vomited. He also had blood on his finger. Security asked the respondent where the victim was and eventually called her on a cell phone. The victim answered the phone and alerted hotel security she was on the 25th floor. Security contacted her and called 911 for police assistance and medical assistance. Security detained the respondent in handcuffs and escorted him down to the security office, awaiting police response. Las Vegas Metro PD officers Meyer and Wynn arrived at the hotel. Meyer contacted the respondent who was being detained in the security office, while Wynn checked on the victim, who was in an office on the 25th floor. According to the Las Vegas Metro PD crime report and in her CHP administrative interview, the victim stated that she and the respondent had been drinking at the Fremont Street experience. The respondent drank too much, fell to the ground, and blacked out. Friends had to call an Uber to get the respondent back to the hotel. Their friends had to help walk the respondent to their room and then place him on the bed. While the respondent laid on the bed sleeping, the victim looked through his cell phone. In doing so, she found several sexually explicit messages and photographs between the respondent and another person. The victim thought to herself, "Not again." After sitting with her sadness and disappointment, the victim tried to go to sleep, but it was difficult for her to get into bed as the respondent was taking up most of the bed space. The victim made numerous attempts to wake the respondent in order to have him move over so she could sleep. Lacking a response by the respondent and frustrated, the victim asked the respondent about the person he exchanged sexually explicit photographs and messages with, calling the person out by name, quote, "who is blank," unquote. Upon hearing the other person's name, respondent suddenly woke up, looked around the room, and began, quote, "wailing," unquote, on her. The victim described wailing as throwing punches to her face. She fell off the bed onto the floor, curled up in a fetal position, and screamed for the respondent to stop as he continued to repeatedly punch her. The respondent stopped his attack momentarily, which allowed the victim to grab a cell phone off the table and run out of the room. Officer Wynn took numerous photographs of the victim's injuries. Las Vegas Metro PD Officer Meyer contacted the respondent, who said he'd been out drinking with the victim on Fremont Street. They had an argument and then took an Uber back to the hotel where he passed out. The next thing the respondent recalled was security waking him. The respondent said he didn't remember the incident. The respondent added he and the victim had been having troubles, but were working on their relationship. Officer Meyer arrested and booked the respondent at the Clark County Detention Facility on a misdemeanor domestic violence charge. The victim was transported by ambulance to the local hospital where she was treated for her injuries and later released. Victim was interviewed by CHPIA on March 28th, 2024, 4 days after the assault, and took these photos of the victim's injuries, which were caused by the respondent. On March 28th, 2024, the Clark County, Nevada District Attorney's Office filed an amended criminal complaint to battery resulting in substantial bodily harm constituting domestic violence, a Category B felony. On July 9th, 2024, the respondent pled nolo contendere to a misdemeanor domestic battery charge. The respondent was required to attend 13 classes of anger management counseling, 2 days in jail, pay court fines, and submit to a mental health evaluation. The facts I've just recited support the division's finding that the respondent was involved in serious misconduct, specifically acts that violate the law. For purposes of the division's analysis, clear and convincing evidence means evidence of a charge is clear and convincing so long as that there is a high probability that the charge is true. The evidence need not establish a fact beyond a reasonable doubt. The division found that the clear and convincing evidence substantiated that respondent's conduct amounted to acts that violate the law as described in Commission Regulation 1205A6. In that on March 24th, 2024, the respondent physically harmed the victim by hitting and punching her numerous times about the head, face, and shoulders. Respondent's actions were inconsistent with the respondent's obligation to uphold the laws of the state. The division finds the respondent's act of violence upon the victim not only violated CHP's internal policies, but also a criminal act by violating Nevada Revised Statute 33.018, which, had it occurred in California, would have violated Penal Code Section 273.5, corporal injury upon a spouse/cohabitant, a felony. In addition to violating the department policies, clear and convincing evidence exists that the respondent violated California Penal Code Section 13510.8 B6 and Commission Regulation 1205 A6, acts that violate the law. Following the presentation to the board, and as documented in the transcripts before you, public comments were made by the respondent, and he responded to questions from the board members. The board then went into closed session. The transcript also documents comments made by members of the public following the presentation. When the board returned to open session, it voted to revoke the officer's certification, 5 in favor and 1 against. With that, I thank you for your time and consideration of this case, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Guyton. Questions and comments from commissioners? At this time, does the subject officer and or his counsel wish to offer public comment? Please come forward. Welcome, sir. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Please remember the commission will only consider facts presented by the division today and will not consider additional facts or defenses. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Elliot Lopez, formerly of the California Highway Patrol. I would like to focus on the fact that this is extremely out of character for me. This is in the 43 years of being on this earth, not once have I even been contacted by law enforcement other than traffic stops. It's hard because when you do everything to take care of and protect your community and take care of your friends and family, this is not something that I would do to someone I loved. The fact that I went almost 17 years in law enforcement and not once out of all the fights I was in went to any of these extremes of any of the photographs you saw on the board today. The witness testimony, I believe, corroborates the fact that I was completely blacked out. I was completely passed out. They had to carry me back to my room, and they had to throw me onto my bed. The victim, my ex-wife in this instance, has provided several different testimonies to what happened that night. We were all of us were drinking way too much. Something did occur, and for whatever occurred, I do apologize if I was a part of that. I do not feel in any way, shape, or form that I was, given the fact that I had asked her for a divorce the month before. The only reason I went on this trip was because friends had paid for everything to go. And they were like family, and I wasn't gonna leave family behind. My fault. I am diabetic. I was not treating myself the week prior to going on this trip, and I did not take any of my medications a day of. One thing I do recall while I was in the being checked, my blood sugar at the jail, it was above 400, I believe, several hours after the heavy alcohol. I have completely eliminated alcohol from my diet now. I have gone to therapy every at least 2 weeks since the incident. I do not feel that this is who I am. This is one incident, unfortunately, that has me here in front of you today. It is extremely hard because when I'm literally trying to do everything to get my life back on track. I recently just worked for the fire cleanup at the Pacific Palisades for the last 6 months. We finished the project at the end of July of last year, and then unfortunately after that I was in a motor vehicle accident. But like I said, I am truly sorry for whatever role I may have played in this. And the only reason I say may have is because I honestly have no recollection of anything that happened that night. The last thing I remember is listening to some kid play drums on a bucket and then security pounding on my door. Just extremely hard to believe that I could do something like this, especially after, like I said, 17 years of being what I thought was a good member of law enforcement to the state of California. So with that, I thank you for your looking into this, and I truly do hope that you decide to allow me to still be a peace officer and give the best of me to the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Seeing none, does the commission wish to adjourn to closed session? Or would any commissioner like to make a motion? A motion is always in order and requires a 2/3 vote of those voting to succeed.
Commissioner Braun, I'll make a motion to revoke.
Second, Brazil.
Mr. Knapp, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Barcelona,
Yes.
Braun,
Yes.
Brazil,
Yes.
Cooper,
Yes.
Doring,
Yes.
Duggan,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Moodian,
Yes.
Moon,
Yes.
Nieto,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Woolry.
Yes.
It's 14 in favor.
Motion carries. We move now to our second and final case today. Bureau Chief Rob Guyton will again present along with Bryant Henley from Post Legal Affairs Bureau, and they will report on post case 240-3212, Richard Adams, who at the time of the events at issue in this case was employed by the California Highway Patrol. The Peace Officer Standards Accountability and Advisory Board voted 6-0 to decertify Mr. Adams. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Again, still Rob Guyton here, Bureau Chief, Professional Conduct Northern Bureau. This time joined by Bryant Henley, attorney in our Legal Affairs Division. We're here with respect to the case of Post versus Richard Adams of the California Highway Patrol. In this case, the division found reasonable grounds to believe that Richard Adams engaged in serious misconduct in violation of Penal Code Section 13510.8 B6, specifically committed domestic violence upon his fiancée on July 13th of 2023. Adams further committed a second act of misconduct by violating Penal Code Section 13510.8 B1 by making dishonest statements in his administrative and criminal investigations to cover up his actions. In accordance with the requirements of Senate Bill 2, and as required by Penal Code Section 13510.85A4, this matter was heard by the Peace Officer Standards Accountability Advisory Board on February 5th of 2026. Following the conclusion of that hearing, the board voted to recommend revocation of Richard Adams' post-certification. The division now presents this matter to you for consideration of suspension or revocation. As required by Penal Code Section 13510.85A5. The record of that proceeding is before you, which includes the agenda and attachments from that meeting, a transcript of the relevant portions of the hearing, and the recommendation of the board. Due to the matter being heard in closed session by the board, Commission Counsel will be able to advise you with respect to those proceedings. The law requires your review to be of that record before the board, which is before you, and which you have had an opportunity to review. To assist you in your review of the record, I will take you through the case as presented there. As the record shows, law enforcement consultant Ray Beckler presented the case before the board substantially as follows. The respondent began his career with the California Highway Patrol on June 26, 2017. The respondent holds a basic post-certification, which he received on June 8, 2019. The respondent had no prior complaints of misconduct resulting in disciplinary action from his agency. In regard to the present allegation, the respondent reported his interaction with law enforcement to his agency on March 19th, 2024. On April 19th, 2024, CHP reported the case to Post. The California Highway Patrol completed their investigation and sustained allegations against the respondent. The respondent was terminated on November 5th, 2024. A factual summary of the respondent's misconduct is as follows. On February 25th, 2024, the respondent and his live-in girlfriend, referred to as the victim, were staying at the Hampton Inn Hotel in Poway, California. At approximately 4 p.m., the victim called 911 after she and the respondent got into an argument and his behavior was scary. The victim waited in the parking lot for the police to respond. San Diego County Sheriff's deputies arrived and contacted the victim, who explained the respondent was an off-duty CHP officer and was inside the hotel. The victim told the deputies she and the respondent were verbally arguing, and he did not get physical with her. The victim added she wanted to drive back to their residence in Yucca Valley by herself, and the respondent wasn't letting her leave without him. While talking to the deputies, the victim informed them about several incidents of physical violence by the respondent over the past 2 years. One of the allegations of prior physical violence reported by the victim was captured on their front door home camera system. This video was shown to the deputies by the victim and depicted the respondent dragging the victim outside the front door of their residence, forcibly pushing her to the ground, causing the victim to land on her head and upper torso. The video further showed the respondent using 2 hands to get control of the victim's right leg as he dragged her out of the front door, while the victim frantically yelled, "Richard, stop, stop." The victim said this incident occurred on July 13th of 2023. And I'd like to show the video at this time.
I'll take a 30-second loop. Can I airdrop this to myself, please? No. Okay.
Richard, stop! Stop! Like you're like on the.
The victim further reported to the San Diego Sheriff's deputies 3 other domestic violence incidents which occurred in June of 2022, May of 2023, and February of 2024, where she endured violence from the respondent. After speaking to the victim, the San Diego Sheriff's deputies elected not to contact the respondent for a statement, as all of the reported incidents of violence occurred in San Bernardino County. The deputies ensured the victim safely drove away from the hotel parking lot without further incident with the respondent. San Diego County, San Diego County deputies reported these incidents and forwarded their report to the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office for follow-up. Each of the prior incidents reported by the victim were investigated both criminally and administratively. Ultimately, the San Bernardino County DA's office filed and pursued prosecution of the respondent for 1 misdemeanor domestic violence charge involving the incident captured on video that occurred on July 13th, 2023. The district attorney's office did not file on any of the other reported domestic violence incidences reported by the victim. The criminal case against the respondent was ultimately dismissed on February 4th of 2025 by the DA's office. In the administrative investigation and subsequent findings against the respondent, the CHP sustained one allegation of committing domestic battery upon the victim, which involved the incident captured on video. All other reported domestic violence incidents were not sustained by the agency. The agency further sustained a finding against the respondent for being dishonest when asked about the domestic violence incident captured on the video. The respondent filed an appeal from dismissal to the State Personnel Board. Respondent's case was heard before State Personnel Board Administrative Law Judge Douglas Purdy on April 1st and 2nd of 2025. After hearing testimony and weighing all evidence, Judge Purdy rendered his decision. Judge Purdy specifically assessed the credibility of the respondent's testimony regarding the video evidence from their home recorded on July 13th, 2023. Judge Purdy documented, quote, "The video footage from the doorbell camera was not consistent with consensual role-playing. The respondent lifted the victim and tossed her onto the front porch where she landed on her back. That action clearly could have resulted in serious injury to the victim, which makes it unlikely she willingly consented to it." Judge Purdy further wrote, "The respondent was dishonest when he told Sergeant Mason, CHP-IA investigator, that the July 13, 2023 incident was consensual role-playing, and when he stated that his disputes with the victim had never escalated into physical conflict." In his concluding remarks, Judge Purdy wrote, "Peace officers hold special positions of trust and are held to the highest standards of behavior. Also, peace officers must frequently testify in court and must be credible and honest to perform their duties effectively. Because of the special position of trust peace officers hold, dishonesty by peace officers warrants harsh punishment." Judge Purdy sustained respondent's dismissal by the agency. Following post-investigation and review, posts found by clear and convincing evidence that reasonable grounds existed for consideration of suspension or revocation pursuant to Penal Code Section 13510.8. The facts I've just recited support the division's finding that the respondent was involved in serious misconduct, specifically acts that violate the law and dishonesty. For purposes of the division's analysis, clear and convincing evidence means evidence of a charge is clear and convincing so long as that there is a high probability that the charge is true. The evidence need not establish a fact beyond a reasonable doubt. The division finds that clear and convincing evidence substantiated that the respondent's conduct amounted to acts that violate the law, as described in Commission Regulation 1205A6 on July 13, 2023. The respondent physically harmed the victim by forcibly throwing her on the ground outside their residence and further dragging her on the ground by her ankles. This conduct was inconsistent with the respondent's obligation to uphold the law or respect the rights of members of the public. The division finds the respondent's acts of violence upon the victim not only violated CHP's internal policies, but also California Penal Code Sections 242 and 243E1, which confirms the respondent's unlawful conduct. In addition to violating the CHP's policies with regards to off-duty conduct, clear and convincing evidence exists that respondent violated California Penal Code Section 13510.8B6 and Commission Regulation 1205A6, acts that violate the law. The division further finds that the clear and convincing evidence substantiated that respondent's conduct amounted to dishonesty, as described in Commission Regulation 1205A1, in that the respondent claimed that the domestic violence encounter recorded on the front door video camera was merely a role-playing incident in which the respondent played the role of a landlord and the victim was a tenant who was late on paying her rent. Respondent made these dishonest statements first to the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office investigators who were investigating a crime, and then later to CHP administrative investigators who were investigating the same events as part of an investigation into misconduct. This conduct was inconsistent with the respondent's obligation to uphold the law or respect the rights of members of the public. The division finds the respondent's statements to the SBSO and CHP concerning the July 13, 2023 video established clear and convincing evidence he violated California Penal Code Section 13510.8B1 and Commission Regulation 1205A1, dishonesty. Following law enforcement consultant Ray Beckler's presentation to the board, and as documented in the transcripts before you, Jason Ewert presented comments on behalf of the respondent. Additionally, the respondent addressed the board and answered questions raised by members of the board. Respondent's comments are reflected in the transcript of the proceedings. No other members of the public presented comments to the board. The board immediately rendered their decision without going into closed session. The board unanimously voted to revoke the officer's certification, 6 in favor and 0 against. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Guyton. Any questions from members of the commission at this point? Seeing no questions at this point, does the subject officer and or his counsel wish to offer public comment? I believe they're online.
Good morning.
One second, if you just wait 1 second, I'd like to just a little preparatory remark that you'll each have 5 minutes to speak. Please remember, though, that the commission will only consider facts as presented by the division today. It will not consider additional facts or defenses. The only question before the commission today is, do the facts presented by the division today, if proven at a subsequent hearing before an ALJ, demonstrate a high probability that serious misconduct as defined in the penal code and commission regs occurred? Welcome.
Understood. Thank you very much. My name is Jason Ewer, and I am the representative for Mr. Richard Adams. We had requested a rescheduling or continuance of this hearing due to a pre-scheduled, prepaid-for trip that Mr. Adams had on calendar at the time. That request was denied, so Mr. Adams prepared a written statement that was submitted for consideration by the commission today. I'd just like to confirm that that statement was received by the commission.
Yes.
Thank you. The facts of this case do not demonstrate clear and convincing evidence that serious misconduct occurred. In addition to the fact that Mr. Adams was not interviewed by the San Diego Sheriff's Department during the initial statements that were provided by the alleged victim in this case, Mr. Adams' statements throughout this investigation have remained consistent. Additionally, the division's finding that there is no corroborating evidence to support the respondent's claim of role playing in this scenario is also contradicted by multiple points of evidence that are identified in the record as it currently exists in front of the commission. Specifically, San Bernardino County Sheriff's Report number 232400513 is attached as attachment D to the commission's to the division's recommendation. And if you look at the sheriff's report, it confirms that the victim reported to the sheriff's department that, quote, the video that you're referring to, that's not what happened in that video, end quote. And that's at page 4. Additionally, when the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department interviewed the respondent, they indicated that the respondent also described they sometimes role play in a rough manner which could be misinterpreted. However, the Sheriff's Department found that Mr. Adams could not explain how or why the role playing would have ended outside, as normally that is a bedroom thing for them. Mr. Adams has tried to explain multiple times throughout this investigation, first with the CHP as well as the State Personnel Board, that he was caught off guard in his garage and was asked to make statements regarding very personal issues concerning his sex life to sheriff's deputies that he was not expecting to ask him questions about that, including one that reminded him of his mother. Additionally, if you look at attachment F to the division's report, it is a letter from the victim, which indicates in pertinent part, I had been drinking alcohol and Richard did not want me to drive. I wanted to leave, so I called the police, and when they arrived, I was drunk, upset, and angry at Richard. I made comments that were untrue at most and exaggerated at the least. It's important to note that Ms. Thien did not testify at any point during the investigation or appeals in this process. At one point, she actually moved out of state. And so there is no actual direct testimony from her regarding this subject incident outside of the videos that were played today and were captured by the San Diego Sheriff's Department. If you look at the State Personnel Board resolution and order, which is included as attachment H to the division's report, at page 19, the administrative law judge acknowledges that absent an applicable exception to hearsay, the board cannot base a finding solely on hearsay evidence. It's our position that the decision was made in error at the State Personnel Board based on inappropriate admission of hearsay evidence. That decision is on appeal through writ proceedings in the Superior Court. Next, during the respondent's IA interview transcript, which is attachment I at the division's report and State Personnel Board Exhibit 16, there are excerpts from that transcript where he explained how he was caught off guard and tried to explain his sexual preferences. But again, as explained to the advisory board, these are very personal, embarrassing matters, and it wasn't until he had time to meet with counsel, go over his case, and was explaining the importance of bearing it all and putting it all on the line on as to what exactly was depicted in those videos that the respondent provided those statements. Respondent has been consistent throughout his testimony. Ultimately, his position is that this was not an act of domestic violence, and therefore his statements regarding what it was are also not dishonest. I encourage the commission to review the written statement that was submitted by a respondent, and I welcome any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Are there any questions of Mr. Hewitt from members of the commission? Also, I'd like to note that your testimony did break up in a couple of places. I don't think we missed anything. But if anyone has any questions along those lines, please ask. And anything of Mr. Hewitt? Nothing, we will move on. I believe Mr. Adams is online. No, we're just using, that's right, we're just using the letter. All right, if there are no questions of Mr. Hewitt, thank you, sir. He's frozen again. Would anyone else like to address the commission at this time? I neglected to ask last time. I think Ms. Williamson or maybe Mr. Miller, I thought we maybe had addressed that in your opening remarks, but please come forward if you wish to address this case. And if there are any comments you wish to make on the previous case, please feel free.
Good morning. My comments address both cases because both cases are the same to me. That they're an act of cowardness, an act of inhumanity and abuse of women. This domestic violence, there's no excuse, no fancy words are flowering around what actually happened to these significant others. I hope in the first case that officer, prior officer, that citizen now, I hope they manage their diabetes. I hope they continue to get counseling. And also, I'm glad that we revoked his certificate, and if not for that, that he would surrender it. There is no excuse. Absolutely, it's just infuriating to see that a person would wear a badge and a gun and still have these propensities to attack a weaker person or anybody that is defenseless against them. So that did lead to the introduction to that idea was in my public comment, but I wanted to speak specifically on this one. I was a little bit disappointed when we went past it, but thank you for bringing it back and recouping it. This in civilized society, we see that law enforcement is supposed to be the ones that keep us in check from abusing other people in our society and in the citizenship. And when the actual officer becomes the abuser, who do we trust? And they're dishonest with how they came about this abuse by role playing or whatever idea that they may have. It is just insulting to think that we would just allow that kind of behavior to happen and be excused away by some fantasy play. And the video speaks differently. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Williamson.
Yes. Mine is very brief. If the public cannot trust peace officers to protect the people closest to them, the public cannot trust them with the power the badge carries. Officers understand that even when off duty, the standards of the profession remain the same. Peace officers are expected to follow the law and can be held accountable when they violate it. I hope you will find the same answer you did with the first officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission? Questions from commissioners at this point? Seeing none. Will of the commission, does the commission wish to adjourn to closed session, or would any commissioner like to make a motion? A motion is always in order and requires a 2/3 vote of those voting to succeed.
Nieto moves to revoke. Gordon.
Motion by Nato, second by Gordon. Mr.
Mr. Chair, I also have it's probably, I don't mean to break up the motion, but I have a request to go into closed session.
Oh,
So I don't know if you want me to run a different motion but
Would you like to go to closed session?
I would.
We'll go to closed session. All right, we will now go to closed session. We will briefly adjourn regular session and we'll be back shortly. motion by Nieto and a second by Gordon to revoke certification. Mr. Chandler, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Knapp, Mr. Chandler.
Barcelona,
Beth?
Ron,
Yes.
Brazil,
Yes.
Cooper, Doring,
Yes.
Duggan,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
Johnson,
I have a conflict and I'm choosing to abstain from the vote.
Long,
Yes.
Moodian,
Yes.
Moon,
Yes.
Nieto,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Woolry.
Yes.
It's 13 in favor.
Motion carries. That was the last item on the agenda. Do any commissioners have questions or comments? If not, we always thank staff for their outstanding support and guidance and good humor. Thank you very much. Applause. So if there's no further business, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Motion, man.
Second, Doran.
Seeing no objection, the motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.